My mother-in-law secretly DNA tested my daughter, but the results exposed a 36-year-old secret she tried to bury forever. My name is Danielle Atwood. I'm 32 years old. And last Sunday, my mother-in-law tried to destroy my marriage in front of the entire family. She slid a thick manila envelope across the dinner table, looked directly at my husband, and said softly, "I think you deserve to know the truth." Inside that envelope was a DNA test she had secretly done on my 3-year-old daughter. She thought the results would prove my daughter was a Marks. She thought she was exposing me, humiliating me, breaking my family apart in one perfect moment. But what Patricia Atwood didn't know was that I had already discovered the test 2 weeks earlier. And during those 2 weeks, I uncovered a secret so devastating, so deeply buried, that by the end of that dinner, Patricia's own life collapsed right in front of her eyes. And trust me, nobody at that table was prepared for what happened next. Now, before I take you back to the beginning, imagine sitting at a family dinner while someone tries to publicly accuse you of cheating. What would you do? Let me take you back 7 years earlier, to the first time I met Patricia Atwood. I was 25 years old. Mark and I had been dating for only 4 months when he brought me to meet his parents at their house in Connecticut. The moment Patricia opened the front door, I felt it. That cold smile, that polite stare, the kind of look that measures your worth before you even sit down. She didn't hug me. She shook my hand like she was interviewing a suspect. Dinner started normally enough. Pot roast, small talk, family stories. But then Patricia slowly turned the conversation toward me. "Where did you grow up, Danielle?" "Bridgeport," I answered. "Small apartment. My mom was a pediatric nurse." "And your father?" I paused. "He left when I was 6. Patricia nodded slowly while touching the pearl earring hanging from her ear. A small habit I would later realize meant something dangerous. Whenever Patricia judged someone, she touched that pearl earring. "That must have been difficult," she said softly. But it didn't sound sympathetic. It sounded recorded, filed away, stored for later. On the drive home, Mark smiled and said, "She likes you." I stared out the window. "Does she?" He laughed. I didn't, because something about Patricia felt calculated. She asked where everything came from. The wine, the furniture, my degree, my family history. Origins mattered to her. At the time, I thought she was just controlling. I had no idea that years later, she would turn that obsession toward my daughter. Mark and I got married the next summer. Small wedding. 40 guests. Ocean breeze coming off the Connecticut coast. I was happy. Truly happy. For a while, life felt peaceful. We rented a house in Milford, about 40 minutes away from Patricia and Warren. Close enough for holidays. Far enough to breathe. Except Patricia didn't believe in boundaries. She had a key for emergencies. And somehow, every Tuesday became an emergency. I'd come home from work and find my spice rack reorganized. The towels rearranged by color. Notes left on the kitchen counter. "This makes more sense. You'll thank me later." Mark always defended her. That's just how mom is. But over time, I noticed something else. Patricia didn't just want control. She wanted influence. She wanted everyone orbiting around her approval, especially Mark. Then our daughter Lily was born. And for 6 months, everything changed. Patricia adored her. She held Lily constantly, bought her clothes every week, told everyone she looked exactly like Mark. For the first time ever, I thought maybe Patricia and I were finally becoming family. Then Lily's hair changed. Slowly. Dark brown, to auburn, to bright copper-red curls that glowed under sunlight. I thought it was beautiful. My mother had red hair. My grandmother too. But the first time Patricia noticed it, she went completely silent. At Lily's first birthday party, she picked up one of Lily's curls carefully between her fingers and smiled. "Interesting. That word again. Red hair," she said while looking directly at Mark. "That doesn't run in the Atwood family." The room went quiet for just a second, just long enough for me to feel it. The suspicion. The beginning of something ugly. And from that moment on, everything started changing. After Lily's first birthday, Patricia changed. Not openly. not dramatically. That's what made her dangerous. She never attacked directly. She planted doubt slowly, carefully, like someone burying glass beneath the soil and waiting for people to walk barefoot. Every family gathering became another opportunity, another comment, another stare, another reminder that my daughter didn't look like an Atwood. She's so unique looking. Those curls are unusual. Maybe there's Irish somewhere in Danielle's family? Always smiling while she said it. Always touching that pearl earring. And every single time, everyone else at the table became quieter. That silence hurt more than the comments, because silence means people are thinking. I started writing everything down in a small notebook beside my bed. Dates, comments, reactions. Maybe it sounds obsessive, but my job trained me to notice patterns. I worked as an occupational therapist at a children's hospital. I spent my days helping kids relearn movements most people take for granted. Tiny progress mattered in my world. A finger twitch, a better grip, a child finally holding a spoon without dropping it. So yes, I noticed patterns. And Patricia's pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. Then Courtney joined in. Mark's younger sister practically worshipped Patricia. If Patricia had a thought, Courtney treated it like gospel. One afternoon, she posted a picture of Lily on Instagram. Lily was standing in Patricia's garden wearing a green romper, her red curls glowing in the sunlight. The caption read, "She's so unique looking eyes wonder where she gets it from LOL." 1,400 likes. I stared at the screen feeling sick. I showed Mark that night. He barely looked up from his phone. "Courtney's just joking." "No," I said quietly. "She's helping your mother." Mark sighed the way tired people do when they don't want conflict. "You're overthinking this." Maybe that was the worst part. Not Patricia. Not Courtney. It was realizing my husband still didn't see what was happening right in front of him. And Patricia knew it. That's why she kept going. Easter dinner was when things finally became public. The whole family was there. Warren, Courtney, Aunt Margot, Uncle Dennis, Ellie. Lily came running into the dining room wearing a yellow dress, laughing so hard she almost tripped over her own shoes. Ellie smiled immediately. She is adorable. Then Patricia set her wine glass down slowly. She really doesn't look like an Atwood. The room froze. Not dramatically. No gasps. No shouting. But the energy changed instantly. You know that feeling when a storm is about to start? That pressure in the air before thunder? That's what it felt like. Courtney laughed awkwardly. "Mom's right. I looked through old family albums once. No redheads anywhere." I looked directly at Mark. He stared down at his plate. Said nothing. That silence hurt more than anything Patricia ever said. Because when someone refuses to defend you, they slowly become part of the attack. On the drive home, I finally snapped. "If your mother says something like that again," I told him, "I'm responding." Mark tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "She doesn't mean it the way you think." I laughed once. Cold. "She absolutely does. She's just protective of family." "No," I said quietly. "She's accusing me of cheating on you." Mark didn't answer. And deep down, I think that scared me most of all. Because part of him was beginning to wonder too. If you're enjoying this story so far, make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I always read them. 3 weeks later, everything changed with one phone call. I was at work cleaning therapy equipment between sessions when my phone rang. Unknown local number. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something told me not to. "Mrs. Atwood?" the woman asked. "This is Kelly from Geneva Labs." The second she said labs, my stomach tightened. "We received a DNA sample submission under your daughter Lily Atwood's name." I stopped breathing. What? There appears to be an issue with parental authorization. I stood up slowly from my chair. I never approved any DNA test. There was a pause. The submission was filed by Patricia Atwood. She identified herself as the child's grandmother. For a moment, everything around me disappeared. The hospital sounds, the hallway noise, the fluorescent lights overhead. Gone. Only one thought remained in my head. Patricia had stolen my daughter's DNA. And suddenly, every strange comment, every stare, every joke, finally made sense. The second I hung up the phone with Geneva Labs, I knew two things immediately. First, Patricia had been planning this for a long time. And second, she truly believed she was going to destroy me with those results. But what Patricia didn't realize was this. I'm not the kind of woman who panics during a crisis. I work with injured children every single day. I've sat beside parents after terrible diagnoses. I've watched mothers break down in hospital hallways while trying to stay strong for their kids. Pressure doesn't scare me anymore. So instead of crying, instead of calling Mark immediately, I called a lawyer. Her name was Rachel Nguyen. Small office in New Haven. Sharp eyes. Calm voice. The kind of woman who notices everything. I told her the entire story. The comments about Lily's hair. The Instagram post. The weird tension at family dinners. The stolen DNA sample. Rachel listened without interrupting once. Then she leaned back in her chair and said something that completely changed the way I saw the situation. Do not confront your mother-in-law yet. I frowned. You want me to stay quiet? No, Rachel said calmly. I want her to continue. That sentence stayed in my head. Rachel explained that under Connecticut law, Patricia had no legal right to DNA test a minor without parental consent. What she did could actually become a civil case. But only if Patricia fully exposed herself first. If you confront her now, Rachel explained, she'll apologize privately. Your husband will defend her. The family will bury it. And nothing changes. I hated how accurate that sounded. Because deep down, I knew Mark. If I told him immediately, he'd call Patricia. She'd cry. She'd say she was just worried. And somehow I'd become the problem for being upset. Rachel looked directly at me. Let her play her hand. So that's exactly what I did. I canceled the DNA submission authorization with the lab immediately. Then I asked them to flag Lily's information against future testing attempts. After that, I started documenting everything. Screenshots, dates, comments, phone records, everything. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table while Mark slept upstairs. And for the first time in years, I stopped feeling powerless. Because now I understood Patricia clearly. This wasn't about Lily's hair. It wasn't even about me. It was about control. Patricia needed to be right. Needed to feel superior. Needed the family orbiting around her version of reality. And somewhere deep inside herself, she was terrified of something. I just didn't know what yet. For the next few days, I acted normal. That was the hardest part. Cooking dinner. Bathing Lily. Smiling through conversations. Pretending I didn't know my mother-in-law was secretly trying to prove my daughter wasn't my husband's child. Meanwhile, Patricia acted sweeter than usual. That's how I knew something big was coming. People like Patricia become extra polite when they believe they're about to win. Then on the fifth day, everything changed. I drove to Patricia's house to pick up a pair of Lily's shoes she'd forgotten there. Patricia wasn't home. Courtney opened the door holding her phone. I walked toward the mudroom, quietly, while Courtney continued talking on FaceTime in the living room. At first, I wasn't even listening. Then I heard my name. She's doing it Sunday during dinner, Courtney whispered excitedly. I froze instantly. My hand tightened around Lily's shoe. She says once Mark sees the proof, Courtney continued, he won't be able to ignore it anymore. My chest went cold. Proof. Dinner. Sunday. They were planning a public humiliation. A performance. I stayed perfectly calm. Walked back into the living room. Smiled naturally. Found the shoes, I said. Courtney nearly dropped her phone. Oh, cool, yeah. Her face had completely changed. Panic. She knew I'd heard something. She just didn't know how much. I left without another word. But once I got inside my car, I locked the doors and sat there gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Now I knew when it would happen. Sunday dinner. Full family audience. Maximum humiliation. Patricia wanted witnesses when she destroyed me. And honestly, that was her biggest mistake. Because public attacks create public consequences. That night, after Lily fell asleep beside me holding her stuffed elephant, I stared at the ceiling for hours thinking about Patricia. About obsession. About insecurity. About people who spend years hunting for flaws in others. And suddenly one question kept repeating inside my head. Why was Patricia so desperate to prove Lily didn't belong in the family? Normal people don't behave like this. Normal grandmothers don't secretly steal DNA from toddlers. No, this kind of behavior comes from fear, from projection, from someone hiding something themselves. And that single thought, is what led me to uncover the secret that destroyed Patricia Atwood forever. 2 days before the dinner, I found the first crack in Patricia's perfect image. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I spent that Thursday night researching the DNA platform Patricia had used. Not the clinical lab, the consumer ancestry website connected to it. The kind that doesn't just test paternity, it searches for relatives too. Cousins, siblings, half-siblings, anyone connected through shared DNA markers. At first, I was only trying to understand how Patricia planned to use the results publicly. But then something strange appeared on Lily's profile. A DNA match. James M. Age 36. Portland, Oregon. Relationship estimate. Half-uncle. I stared at the screen for almost an entire minute. My brain immediately started calculating possibilities. Half-uncle meant one thing. Someone biologically connected to Mark's side of the family had another child nobody knew about. And since Lily was linked through Mark, that meant either Warren had a secret son, or Patricia did. My stomach dropped. Suddenly, every strange thing Patricia had ever done started rearranging itself in my head like puzzle pieces finally clicking together. The obsession with bloodlines. The paranoia. The fixation on real family. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was projection. I dug deeper. The profile belonged to a man named James Callahan. Born in 1990. Adopted at birth through a private agency in Connecticut. Patricia would have been 25 years old then. 2 years before marrying Warren. 2 years before Mark was born. I leaned back slowly in my chair, feeling chills move through my arms. Patricia had a son before her marriage. A son she gave up. A son she buried so deeply that nobody in the family even knew he existed. And now, after spending years accusing me of hiding secrets, her own secret had surfaced through the exact DNA test she ordered. The irony was almost unbelievable. I took screenshots immediately, saved backups, emailed everything to Rachel. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Rachel sounded stunned. "If these results are accurate," she said carefully, "your mother-in-law exposed herself." That sentence hit hard, because that's exactly what happened. Patricia created the weapon. Patricia pulled the trigger. She just didn't realize it would point backward. The deeper I looked, the worse it became. One shared DNA connection listed another relative tied to James. Margaret R. Aunt Margot. Which meant one terrifying thing. Margot knew. She had known for decades. Suddenly, I understood her behavior at every family event. The nervous silence. The avoiding eye contact. The tension whenever Patricia mentioned Lily's hair. Margot wasn't just uncomfortable. She was scared. Scared Patricia's secret might somehow come out. And now it had. I closed my laptop and sat in complete silence. Honestly, for the first time since all this started, I actually felt sorry for Patricia. Not for the woman she became, but for the terrified 25-year-old version of her who probably sat alone signing adoption papers all those years ago. I understood fear. I understood shame. But instead of healing from it, Patricia buried it. Then spent decades turning that buried pain into control over everyone around her. And when Lily was born with the same red hair Patricia once hated in herself, it triggered something inside her. Fear. Exposure. Maybe even guilt. That's why she became obsessed with proving Lily didn't belong. Because deep down, Patricia was terrified someone would discover she had hidden a child from the family. Friday morning, Patricia called Mark personally. "Big family dinner Sunday," she said cheerfully. "I want everyone there." Her voice sounded excited, like someone preparing for a celebration. And, in a way, she was. She thought Sunday would be the day she finally exposed me. Meanwhile, I spent Friday organizing every screenshot and document into folders. Dates. Comments. DNA records. Lab confirmation calls. Everything. Rachel gave me one final warning that night. You can still stop this privately if you want. I thought about it carefully, then shook my head. No, I said quietly. She wanted an audience. Because the truth was, after years of humiliation, suspicion, whispers, and manipulation, I needed the entire family to finally see Patricia for who she really was. Not the polished version. Not the perfect mother. Not the family protector. The real Patricia Atwood. And by Saturday night, I knew exactly how Sunday dinner was going to end. I just didn't know how much damage the truth would leave behind. Sunday arrived quietly. Too quietly. The kind of quiet that feels dangerous. Like the air before a tornado touches the ground. I got dressed slowly that morning. Simple ivory sweater. Dark jeans. Small gold necklace Mark gave me on our first anniversary. No dramatic makeup. No armor. I didn't want to look like someone preparing for war. Even though that's exactly what it was. Lily wore a blue dress covered in tiny white flowers. She spun in circles in the hallway mirror before we left, laughing at herself. Mark smiled watching her. And for one painful second, I almost told him everything. I almost stopped the entire night before it started. But then I remembered every moment he stayed silent while Patricia questioned me. Every excuse. That's just how she is.
No.
He needed to see this himself. The drive to Patricia's house took 40 minutes. Lily fell asleep halfway there. Classic rock played softly through the speakers while streetlights passed across Mark's face. He looked tired, completely unaware that his entire understanding of his family was about to collapse. When we arrived, 3 cars were already parked outside. Full audience. Exactly how Patricia wanted it. She opened the front door before we even knocked. She hugged Mark tightly, barely acknowledged me. But the moment I stepped inside, I saw it. The manila envelope sitting on the hallway table, waiting. Patricia noticed me staring at it and smiled that same tight smile I'd hated for 7 years. The pearl earring smile. Dinner first, she said calmly. The performance had already started. Dinner felt surreal. Everyone acted normal, but nobody actually relaxed. Courtney kept checking her phone every 30 seconds. Aunt Margot barely touched her food. Warren looked confused more than anything else. And Patricia? Patricia looked confident. Too confident. Like someone who had rehearsed every second of the evening in her head 100 times already. Then finally, she stood up. The room immediately went silent. She walked into the hallway, picked up the envelope, and returned slowly to the table holding it against her chest like evidence in a courtroom. Before dessert, she said softly, there's something this family deserves to know. Mark frowned instantly. Mom, what is this? Patricia slid the envelope toward him. This is a DNA test for Lily. The room physically changed. You could feel it. Dennis stopped moving completely. Ellie stared at the table. Courtney looked almost excited. And Margot closed her eyes like she already knew disaster was coming. Patricia folded her hands carefully. I did this because I love my family, she said. And because Mark deserves the truth. Truth about what? Mark asked slowly. Patricia finally looked at me directly. That child does not look like an Atwood. There it was. Out loud. Finally. Years of suspicion spoken openly in front of everyone. Courtney shifted nervously beside her. Patricia continued anyway. Red hair does not run in this family. I think Mark has a right to know whether Lily is really his daughter. The sentence landed like broken glass. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved. Even Mark looked stunned. Then Patricia smiled slightly and pushed the envelope closer. Open it. She truly believed she had already won. Mark slowly opened the envelope and pulled out the papers. The entire room watched him silently. 10 seconds passed. Then 20. I watched Patricia carefully. The confidence in her face started fading first. Tiny cracks appearing. Then Mark finally looked up. His voice was completely flat. She's mine. Patricia blinked. What? Probability of paternity, 99.9998%. Courtney's face dropped instantly. Patricia grabbed the edge of the table. That can't be right. Mark looked directly at her. Lily is my daughter. And suddenly, for the first time in years, Patricia looked afraid. Real fear. Not embarrassment. Not frustration. Fear. Because her perfect public execution had just failed in front of the entire family. But the worst part for her? We weren't even close to finished yet. And deep down, I think Patricia had already started realizing it. The room was completely silent after Mark confirmed Lily was his daughter. Not normal silence. Heavy silence. The kind that presses against your chest until breathing feels difficult. Patricia stood frozen beside the table, still holding onto the edge of her chair like the floor beneath her had suddenly become unstable. "That test is wrong," she whispered. Mark looked up slowly. "No, Mom," he said calmly. "The test is right." Courtney looked terrified now. Not smug anymore. Not excited. Just scared. Because the situation she thought would destroy me was starting to turn around. Then I finally spoke. And the second I did, everyone looked at me. "The lab contacted me 2 weeks ago," I said quietly. "They needed parental consent because somebody illegally submitted Lily's DNA." Warren turned sharply toward Patricia. "You tested our granddaughter without permission?" Patricia immediately straightened up defensively. "I was protecting this family." "No," I said calmly. "You were trying to accuse me of cheating on your son." The words hit harder because I didn't yell them. I stayed completely calm. That scared Patricia more than anger ever could, because calm people usually come prepared. And Patricia suddenly realized I was prepared. Mark slowly looked between both of us. "You knew about this?" he asked me quietly. "For 2 weeks. His face changed instantly. Not anger, confusion, shock. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because if I had," I answered softly, "you would have protected her." That sentence cut deep. I saw it in his eyes immediately. Because he knew I was right. For years he had defended Patricia's behavior, explained it away, minimized it, and now he was finally seeing the damage himself. Then I leaned forward slightly. "But honestly," I said calmly, "the illegal DNA test isn't even the most shocking thing in those results." Every head at the table turned toward me instantly. Even Patricia stopped breathing for a second. Mark frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Page 4, I said. Mark flipped through the papers slowly until he reached the familial DNA match report. Then he read the name out loud. Potential relative, James M. Relationship estimate, half-uncle. The entire room froze again. Mark stared at the page, then at me, then at Patricia. "Half-uncle," he repeated slowly. Now Patricia looked like she might collapse. Her face had completely lost color. "Mom," Mark whispered. "Who's James?" Patricia opened her mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time since I met her, Patricia Atwood had no control over the room anymore. And that terrified her. I don't know," she stammered weakly. That's when Aunt Margot suddenly stood up. "Trish," she said sharply, "don't lie." The room exploded emotionally after that. Not loudly. Worse. Quiet devastation. Warren slowly stood from his chair staring at Patricia like he didn't recognize her anymore. "Patricia," he said carefully, "answer him." Patricia started crying instantly. Real crying this time. Not manipulation. Not performance. Actual panic. "It was before you," she whispered to Warren. "I was young. I was scared." Mark looked physically sick. "You had another child?" Patricia covered her mouth, crying harder. "I gave him up for adoption." Nobody moved. Nobody even blinked. 36 years of lies had just detonated in the middle of Sunday dinner. Warren sat down slowly, like his legs stopped working properly. "You never told me?" he asked quietly. Patricia cried harder. I was ashamed." Then Mark asked the question that shattered her completely. "You spent years accusing Danielle of hiding secrets." His voice cracked slightly. "While you were hiding a son?" That sentence destroyed her. You could literally see it happen. All the control, all the superiority, all the confidence Patricia carried for years. Gone. And then something happened nobody expected. Mark pulled out his phone. "There's something else," he said quietly. He opened an old photograph and placed it on the table. Young Patricia. maybe 19 years old. Bright red hair, the exact same shade as Lily's curls. Dennis stared at the picture in disbelief. "Patricia," he whispered, "you were a redhead?" Patricia slowly removed one of her pearl earrings with shaking fingers and placed it on the table. Small click against the wood. "I started dyeing it when I was 19, she whispered. "I hated it." And suddenly, everything made sense. Lily's hair didn't expose me. It exposed Patricia. That's why she became obsessed. That's why she couldn't stop attacking my daughter. Every time she looked at Lily, she saw the truth she spent 40 years trying to erase. And now, that truth was sitting at the dinner table staring directly back at her. After Patricia admitted everything, the family completely fell apart. Not with screaming, not with drama, with silence. The kind of silence that only happens when people realize the person they trusted most was never who they thought she was. Warren looked older in just a few minutes. Like 34 years of marriage had suddenly landed on his shoulders all at once. "You lied to me for our entire marriage," he said quietly. Patricia cried harder. "I was scared." Warren shook his head slowly. "No," he answered. "You were scared once." Then he looked directly at her. After that, it became a choice. That sentence broke something inside the room permanently. Courtney was crying too now, mascara running down her face, while she stared at Patricia in complete disbelief. "You told me Danielle cheated," she whispered. "You made me believe all of this." Patricia couldn't even answer anymore, because there was nothing left to say. The truth had already done its damage. Mark stood up from the table slowly, and for the first time in 7 years, he finally chose me publicly. He walked over beside my chair and placed one hand gently on my shoulder. Small gesture, huge meaning. Then he looked directly at his mother. "You tried to humiliate my wife," he said calmly. "You tried to turn this entire family against her." Patricia opened her mouth to respond, but Mark stopped her immediately. "No. You don't get to control this conversation anymore." Even Warren looked shocked hearing his son speak that way, because Mark avoided conflict his entire life. But something inside him had changed that night. Maybe some people only find their voice after watching someone they love get attacked for too long. I finally stood up carefully while holding Lily against my shoulder. She had slept through almost everything upstairs. Thank God for that. Her tiny hand rested against my neck while her red curls spilled across my arm like copper fire under the dining room lights. Patricia looked at Lily and completely broke down again. Not because of the DNA test, because for the first time, she understood what she had really done. She spent years attacking a little girl who looked exactly like her. And now everyone knew why. If you've made it this far into the story, subscribe and comment where you're watching from. Stories like this remind us that truth always finds its way to the surface eventually. Warren grabbed his jacket first. "I'm leaving," he said quietly. Nobody stopped him. Dennis followed. Then Ellie. One by one, the family walked out of Patricia's house until she was standing alone in the dining room she had prepared so carefully for my humiliation. The same dinner table, the same envelope, the same audience. Only now, she was the one exposed. Mark helped me carry Lily to the car. The drive home felt completely different from the drive there. The tension was gone, replaced by shock, exhaustion, relief. For almost 10 minutes, nobody spoke. Then finally Mark whispered, "I have a brother." I looked over at him. His eyes stayed fixed on the road. "Yeah," I answered softly. Another long silence. Then he reached over and took my hand. And this time, he didn't let go. The next few weeks changed everything. Warren moved out temporarily. Courtney apologized to me personally. And Mark contacted James, the half-brother nobody knew existed. Turns out James had spent years searching for his biological family. And when Mark finally video called him for the first time, both of them cried. Same jawline, same eyes, same laugh. Two brothers separated for 36 years because of one secret. Meanwhile, Patricia stopped dyeing her hair. Within months, silver-gray roots started growing and mixed with traces of faded red underneath. The color she spent decades trying to erase. And honestly, that was the saddest part of the entire story. Not the lies, Not the DNA test. Not even the betrayal. It was realizing Patricia hated herself so deeply that she spent 40 years running from the truth instead of healing from it. But despite everything, I didn't stop her from seeing Lily. Because children shouldn't carry the weight of adult mistakes. The visits just happened on our terms now. No secrets. No manipulation. No private time alone. Boundaries. Real ones. 6 months later, James visited Connecticut with his wife and daughter. Watching Mark and James sit together laughing on my back porch honestly felt unreal. The DNA test Patricia used to destroy our family ended up rebuilding it in a completely different way. And that's the thing about truth. People can hide it, bury it, deny it, but eventually, truth stops asking for permission to exist. The manila envelope still sits in my desk drawer today. I never threw it away, because it reminds me of something important. Sometimes the weapon someone creates to destroy you becomes the exact thing that sets you free. And if this story taught you anything, let it be this. The people most obsessed with exposing others are usually hiding the darkest secrets themselves. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this with someone who needs to hear it.